What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. The media day went down today. As we said earlier, we're going to break that down. What does it tell us about heading into the season? What are the mindset about some of the players, the coaching, the executives? We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
All right, Bulls fans. So media day was fun, especially like being now on this side, right? Like actually covering it and, having a platform and things like that. I've always been somebody who kind of watched media day even before, but like it would be like not appointment level television at this point now. Like I was there glued in. I didn't wait till after the fact. I watched every single interview live. And so we started off media day with Arturas Karnisovas and head coach Billy Donovan. And so the first question, as we all expected to be asked, was about Lonzo Ball and the surgery and why waiting so long. And I think Arturas had a very good answer on this one, responding with,
gave every opportunity to rehab and get back on a court without doing the surgery. So that was our thought process, and we did obviously with the thought in mind what's best for the player. We're at crossroads now that we need to do something else, and that's why we opted in to do the procedure. We worked very closely with Lonzo and his representation and looked at every option possible, and we got to this conclusion. In terms of timeline, we don't know what's going to be, as we reported, 4-6 weeks, we're going to reevaluate him and see where he's at.
And this is kind of what we speculated and talked about before, is the fact that you always want to try to avoid, no matter how minor the surgery, to open and cut somebody up for a second time, especially a second time within 9 months of having another surgery. So with that being said, they try to give him every opportunity to come back, to respond, and to get back on the court. And, they fully did expect him to heal without the need of surgery, but the way things went ended up not going that way. So they did decide to go ahead, pull the trigger on surgery to be something that's going to get them back in tune sooner rather than later. Now, this interview, as far as with the guys out there, it was insightful to see how the mindset behind the construction of the team very early on as well. For Arturas, they did ask,
obviously with the Lonzo thing and so much talk about continuity and bringing everything back. When you looked and saw what happened with the rest of the East, does that, your plan is your plan, you really can't change it, but does that make you rethink it, that there's some continuity with some other teams in the East, but also the teams kind of in our area code also improved? Does that kind of change your idea of what the plan was and maybe rethinking that plan?
It doesn't change it just because I don't think we saw our group and with any kind of consistency. We had 29 different starting lineups last year. We didn't have Lonzo since January, so it's been 3 games. We played without him, so I think we need to see. We need time to see this group play together.
And Arturas had the answer that we all expected with this one, saying that, that they didn't get to have an extended look of these guys together. They want to see and get these guys a chance to really look at this group together to see what can come up of it. So he does not regret making more moves in the offseason, as some Bulls fans are, I'm sure, don't like hearing. But then talking about, in the acquisitions that they did make, it was about adding more depth for Coach Billy Donovan, Arturas said, and then they feel they did that. And then Billy Donovan kind of followed it up with saying, talking about the specific roles that he did see players playing with. Now,
front court center position, Vuce is obviously a guy that stretches the floor and does a lot of different things, both inside and out. And I think, as AK alluded to, Andre is a guy that really is an elite rebounder, has been an elite rebounder for a long period of time. I think he gives us more rim protection back there. He gives us more size. I think he can certainly make a difference, for us on both ends of the floor. Because I think the one thing with Andre that's a little bit underrated is he has been a pretty good facilitator. He's obviously been an elite roller and screener, but he also can facilitate some. And I think that that's something that maybe we can help, utilize, from him. I've always been an admirer of Goran. No previous relationship. Arturas has a relationship with him and had talked to me about him. I had a chance to go over to Slovenia and spend some time with him, and just an incredible guy. And as Arturas said, I think a guy that's hungry to win, but also a guy that I think will do whatever he needs to do out there to impact the group. You know, whether it's through leadership or the way he plays, playing on the ball, off the ball. I think throughout his career, he has just always, I think, prided himself on winning and competing. And I think as a veteran guy who's, you know, deep into his career, I think that kind of player in the locker room can help the entire group.
One of the things that we're asked about that we did expect early on was the starting point guard role. And Billy Donovan answered that in the most political, non-answer way. But I think there's some things in that to kind of take away of what his mindset is in there. He talked very highly about Ayo Dosunmu, how Ayo came in. They did expect him to be a player that came back and forth from the G League, but he did earn time, and that he was thrust into a role that they didn't necessarily see him being in at the beginning of the season or when he initially was drafted, but that he did pretty well in that. And they talked more about establishing an identity, letting the starting lineup figure itself out after they establish that identity. And that's all. It all makes sense, right? Everything with that, it all makes sense. It all follows the trend of what we've seen if you pay attention to this team. So all that tracks and follows. It did seem like Billy Donovan, as far as the acquisitions, talked about Andre Drummond and what he can bring with extra possessions, rebounding, the fact that he's one of the better rebounders in the league, the defense. But one of the things that he mentioned that I think a lot of people go over as well is saying Andre Drummond's ability to facilitate, that they do plan on using his ability to facilitate, and they think he's a better passer than what people give credit for. He talked about Andre Drummond's ability to switch 1 through 5 on defense, and then said adding Goran Dragic was more about adding winning, leadership, and experience in regards to that. So that's where it says right now. One thing that did come out as well is that Billy Donovan actually flew over to Slovenia to spend some time with Goran Dragic over there. And Goran, in his time when he came back on there, said, yeah, he came over there, spent some time with him and his family. And Goran Dragic as well. You know, we're not going to follow this linearly, so hopefully my thought process it's easy to follow for everyone. But Goran Dragic, when he was out there, mentioned how one of the reasons that he chose the Chicago Bulls, that he did briefly fly out to LA. I don't know if we knew that Goran came out to LA to spend some time with the team, and talked about how the closeness of the team, of what they're building, it really did entice him and make him more interested in joining the team. He talked about the Bulls try to get him before. So, with that said, and Billy Donovan flying over to Slovenia to spend some time with him and visit him, and that they had some great conversations, again, points towards that chemistry rebuilding here as a team, just the era that we're building as a team here as well. Just, everything that's coming into this, the culture that we're building, I guess is the word that I'm looking for, is that, it is. He says one of the reasons Goran Dragic did sign with the team is because he liked the way that they played last season. And so, that's kind of what came out of Billy Donovan and Arturas Karnisovas time out there. They were asked very heavily about Patrick Williams. And Billy Donovan did say as well that with Patrick Williams, that he does need to take a step, that they know that he needs to be more aggressive. He talked about how, Patrick Williams is more of a passer by nature, and it is up to them to kind of get him in more positions and better positions, but it's up to him to be more aggressive in learning his role. Talked about that, this is his first time having a regular offseason, which is something I think we overlook. He came into the COVID season, was injured last season. This is his first time also having a full offseason as well, and talking about how, he knows that he needs to make a step. He's seen the work that he's done over the summer, and that he fully thinks that Patrick Williams is going to be ready to take that and operate in his spots and pick his spots a little bit better more and be confident in picking those spots. Now, he did say, in talking about Billy Donovan and talking about the team needing to establish an identity on both sides of the ball, that they are going to look to establish that early into the season. And while they're not really focused on determining who the starting point guard is, they are more focused with establishing that identity and play style. Talked about how they needed to work things out and change things around. And so hearing that and everything, and about Patrick Williams, he said this to say as well: Patrick Williams is starting to understand his spots and when to be aggressive. He's naturally a pass-first player, but he understands we need him to be more aggressive. And one of the things that we heard throughout every one of these interviews, DeMar talked about it, Zach LaVine talked about it, Caruso was asked about it, everybody just about was asked about it, as well as Patrick Williams, on getting to that next level. What does Patrick Williams mean to your team? Zach LaVine had a very great answer in this, in which he said, yeah, we know that we need him to be, need him to be more aggressive. We need him to take a step, but we still need him to be him. So, I think everybody at this point knows, especially when you're betting on continuity, you get that air from this press conference and this media day, that that his teammates understand, this franchise understands that Patrick Williams, if he's able to make that leap, if he's able to take that step up that so many people do expect and see within him, that it's going to take this team to whole new heights and levels. Now, Patrick Williams, when he was out there on the podium himself, he talked about and asked, he was mainly asked about his workout with DeMar. One of the funniest things is that DeMar was asked about it, and he was like, I want you guys to ask Pat. So that was great. And when Patrick Williams was asked about it, he just said it was hell. He said that, but it made him have a new respect for DeMar DeRozan as a person, as a player for what he does. He talked about the 5 a.m. workout, saying that you had to be there at 5 a.m., that sometimes he would show up at 4:30, and you put your body through hell early. Then they went back with DeMar's family son, got some court, did another workout in the afternoon, and that what he learned from DeMar DeRozan in that is going to pay dividends for him. And this is something as well that I've been talking about, is how DeMar DeRozan and what he's teaching these young players is going to pay off for years and years, even after he's not in the Chicago Bulls franchise. Patrick Williams said this, that the one thing that DeMar DeRozan asked him to do is to teach this, what DeMar taught him this season, to a player when Patrick Williams is in DeMar's position. You want to hear that. That, again, that's building, that's chemistry building, right? That's culture building. That's building a winning atmosphere within your team. And we're getting that. Now, Zach LaVine, in his time out there, he was asked about adding to his game. And he talked about, adding something to his game that he's improved every season, how seriously he takes getting the contract in the spot that he's in, that he believes in this team. And that he said that he had a conversation with Lonzo Ball. And he said this, make sure you are ready when you are, because when you come back, we need you. You are our starting point guard. Zach LaVine showing at least some of that leadership I wanted to see from him. When he was asked about Patrick Williams, he said he's ready to go after it. That's it, period. When Zach LaVine talked about the expectations of this team, he says, if they are not high, then what are we doing here? Again, this team, regardless of how some of Bulls fans, some of the media, some of whoever looks upon this Bulls offseason, there's a lot of confidence in this building. There's a lot of confidence in the skill level that they have, the talent that they have on this team. And that was aired throughout all of the media day. Nikola Vucevic came out on New Media Day as well. He talked about his season last season. He didn't shy away from it. He said that, he did settle for outside shots a little bit too much. That in going from being the main guy to having a different role on this team, he did struggle. He tried to do some things, try to set some other people up. He settled for shots he shouldn't have instead of going down low. Everything that we have thrown, anybody has thrown at Nikola Vucevic, he said it in this press conference. And yes, it's easy to say it out your mouth doing it during a press conference, but it's harder at times to actually put it into practice. And hopefully Nikola Vucevic he shows it in the way that he plays the season, that confidence, being more settled in his role, knowing his spots, knowing what he can do. He talked about being a stretch five, saying that if you took his 3-point shot away, he's still a pretty good center. But if you took that away and made him rely on that, that's when questions come up. And so with that being said, there's a level of awareness from Nikola Vucevic that I think sometimes we doubt that he had by the way that the play went on the court. But at least through this press conference, what he talked about is very well. Now, one thing as well that I'd be remiss if I did not talk about in bringing up Nikola Vucevic, Billy Donovan was asked if we should expect to see some of Vooch and Andre Drummond playing out there together. And while he didn't outright say no, he did mention how, we're going to play Javante at the 4, Derrick Jones Jr. at the 4, even possibly seeing some Patrick Williams as small ball 5. So at least what I gotten from this, or what I gathered from this, is don't expect to see Andre Drummond, for anyone who thought or was hopeful, don't expect to see Andre Drummond and Nikola Vucevic out there too much together, maybe outside of some special lineups, maybe outside of, if they're down in the game to get some things going, or if Vooch's shot is hot. Vooch was asked about being a stretch 4. He made sure that he said, I'm a stretch 5. Now he doesn't know about being a stretch 4. So with all that said, I don't expect to see much of Vooch and Andre Drummond out there by the words that we got today. But again, confidence is very high. Alex Caruso came out there. He said, we have a really, really good team. He was asked about his play style and said that, maybe he goes after less 50-50 balls. Maybe he saves it for the playoffs. But then also said, yeah, I say that in front of a microphone right now. I don't know if Alex Caruso's game needs to change. I wouldn't necessarily say that that's what needs to happen. But at the end of the day, again, a level of awareness. But one of my best and favorite parts of the media coverage today and the media day was Goran Dragic coming out there. And when he was asked about the Derrick Rose thing and being dunked on, saying, hey, I was dunked on once in my career. And he even asked one time when him and Derrick Rose were on an Adidas tour together, like, hey man, why'd you do me like that? So just a level, and it's everything getting from this team. Zach LaVine saying he was happy to return to the Bulls. Everything just coming from this, and this media day just solidified that there is a lot of confidence in this building. There's a level of awareness in this building. Billy Donovan, even though, some people are going to hate to see that we're going to still play a lot of small ball, which I would say this, I don't understand what you were expecting looking at this roster. I know Marko Simonovic, there was some hope there. I had some hope there. I still have some hope for Marko Simonovic to eventually earn some NBA minutes. Doesn't seem like, don't expect that early in the season. We're going to see a lot of Javonte Green. Me and Pat, we just have disagreed on how many minutes does Javonte actually get. By the way that Billy Donovan has talked about it is that he's going to still get a lot of minutes because they're still expecting him to be the backup 4 and play some backup 3 as well a lot of times. So Billy Donovan had this to say when asked about the improvement in the East. He says this year is going to be way harder than last year just because the East is better and we got a lot more challenges in front of you. We got to put in the work. They understand the view of this team right now. They understand that people are a little bit down on this roster, maybe even more down than what they were coming into last season, even after seeing that, hey, no, Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan can play together. But with the improvements in the East, this team not doing as much as some people would have hoped and liked them to see, this team is still very confident. And walking away from this media day, seeing these conferences, seeing the confidence in Arturas Karnisovas, seeing the confidence from Billy Donovan, and even him saying that we got to find ways in the coaching. One of the things that I've been talking about very heavily on this channel is wanting to see the coaching improvements and utilize certain players better. Billy Donovan said that as well himself. Overall, I would say this. This was a solid media day to get our palates ready for the season, to look at some of the things that these players have been working on, some of the improvements that Arturas wants to see, Billy Donovan wants to see. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to what's on the court. So whether we have the starting point guard in lock or not, if Billy Donovan just, hiding the cards right now, even in Goran Dragic and what he said out there, I didn't get the feeling that Goran is even expecting to be the starting point guard for this team. Now, again, that could be me completely seeing what I want to see in it. That's why I like having these conversations. Again, I always say, I don't have the answers. I'm here to start the conversation. This is not the end of the conversation. That's what the comment section's for. But with that being said, this was a good media day. I like the confidence from DeMar. I like the confidence from Zach LaVine. DeMar being asked, I didn't talk a lot about DeMar. So before we go, like DeMar even being asked, like, him being in his 14th season in the year, how can you continue to add things to your game? And him saying, like, I don't understand where this notion is that as you get older, you can't still add things to your game. Even saying, like, it may not be something major. It may not be a big improvement, but if you can continue to make small improvements to your game that they eventually pay off. Again, as I'll keep drilling home, I love this team. I love the energy around this team. Everybody who had a media day press conference today not only said the right things, but it really seemed genuine in what they did. If you watch the body language, things like that. This was a fun day and a good way to unofficially start the season. The Bulls get started with practice tomorrow. I'm sure we'll hear more and more coming out of that with our eyes on our first preseason game and just single digits away. We will be playing our first preseason game on October 4th, next Tuesday. And we're going to see a lot of what we've been hearing, what we heard in this media day, either come to fruition or hopefully then work on some things. Can't wait to see what this Bulls team look like. I'm excited for the additions even more, hearing how Billy Donovan plans to use people and Andre Drummond and talking about his ability to switch, get rebounds, things like that. It's a lot of positivity to come out of this media day. That's how I feel about it. Let me know how you guys feel about it down below. Thank you for tuning in and being the best part of Chicago Bulls Central. You make sure you follow the show at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text and a voicemail, sound off for a mailbag episode, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related because of you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.